And we're joined by Keith Bulmer, a historian at the Okanagan Military Museum. Interesting fact that when we look back at D-Day, that our local regiment, the BC Dragoons, were not there. So tell us, where were they?
Well, at that time, they were in Italy as part of the 1st Canadian Division and the 5th Canadian Division, advancing from Sicily up the boot of Italy towards Rome. So there was a lot of action going on in preparation for the liberation of Rome in May and June of '44, while the other Canadian troops, led by Kelowna's Major General Keller in the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, were preparing to land at Juno.
Right. But back in Italy, they had to punch their way through a couple of pretty heavily reinforced lines that the Germans and Italians had set up across Italy.
Yeah, that's correct. They were called the Gustav and the Hitler line, and they were defending Rome from the German and Italian side. It was a very narrow valley, probably similar to our own geography here, trying to come up Highway 97 between Penticton and towards Vernon, and facing those sort of obstacles. You couldn't really flank out into the highlands and come back down. So it made it very difficult, very congested effort to break these defensive lines.
They don't happen to be involved in D-Day, the Dragoons, but this term emerges where they get called, I think it's a bit of a slur, the DDay Dodgers, as though they were somehow deliberately avoiding this important battle.
Yeah, the DDay Dodgers term is connected to a parliamentarian in the British Parliament, Lady Astor, Nancy Astor, and she says something in Parliament that puts the 8th Army, British 8th Army, and the Canadians and Poles and everybody else associated with, in a lesser light. And they took that term on as a badge of honor. And they even created lyrics, various versions of lyrics, some risque, some others, related to the tune of Lily and Marlene, called the DDay Dodgers. And they're reflecting back that, yeah, we're having a good time. Oh, yeah, sure.
So in Italy that spring and summer, this was no picnic?
No, it wasn't. These the units like the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, the Seaforth Highlanders, the BC Dragoons, the Lord Strathcona Horses, and the artillery and all the logistic forces, they were taking casualties as we were contributing our part with the 8th British Army to break those lines and get on to Rome. And for the BCD's part, for May and June, those 8 weeks, we lost 18 men, all ranks, officers and below.
And meanwhile, you do hear stories of other Okanagan young men who did wind up in D-Day. These are men who had enlisted with other regiments, am I right?
Yeah, that's correct. There was, because the BCDs were not mobilized immediately in 1939, some of the men that were eager to get into service, into uniform following the dirty 30s, would leave their local regiments behind and go join somebody else, like the New Westminster Regiment or the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada or the Canadian Scottish out of Vancouver Island.
Right. Add it all up, there was a lot of men who went over there and fought bravely at that time, whether or not the main well-known Okanagan Regiment was a part of D-Day.
That's correct. And we're talking about everybody from the cook, the mechanic, the clerk, on forward to the combatant contributing. And then you broaden that picture out for D-Day, and you look at Canadians that were on Canadian ships that were patrolling the English Channel and bringing in the troops onto the beaches. You're looking at the Air Force bombing the airfields in the rear areas behind Normandy. So we've got a huge number of Canadians involved.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks for telling us about it, Keith Bulmer, historian at the Okanagan Military Museum, and thank you for watching Kelowna Now.